Welcome to another episode of The People Behind the Books, the show where we step away from the credits and calculations to meet the humans who power the tax and accounting world. Everyday stories, meaningful conversations, and a reminder that behind every tax return is a person with a story. I'm your host, Yehuda. Let's meet today's guest. Welcome to The People Behind the Books with me, your host, Yehuda Tenenbaum. And today we have on the show, I'd like to say a friend of mine, Jack Mao. We are both enrolled agents, and I'd say that's how we started getting to know each other. But Jack, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit more real quick and go into what your current positions are. And I say positions very specifically because I know you're doing a lot of stuff at the moment.
Sure. And thanks for having me on, Yehuda. Yeah, so my name is Jack. I'm an enrolled agent, one of the youngest to be federally credentialed. Been in practice for about 6, 7 years now. Currently own my own tax firm, Jack Mao Tax Services Corp, out here in Palo Alto and San Francisco, California. Working with a lot of high net worth individuals, immigrants, startups, college students, and everyone in between. Also, in the past, have run a federally funded tax VITA tax site called Tax Fellows. Um, and right now as well, I am a co-founder managing the product innovation at Accordance, which is a AI tax research software that we're building. Very exciting. And yeah, also, I guess one last other position that I'll mention is I also serve on the Federal Electronic Tax Administration Advisory Committee, which reports to Congress and the IRS on systemic improvements that we can make to the American tax system to make it safer, to make it simpler, um, and to make it just better for all American taxpayers. And so I do go Washington, D.C. time to time to meet with my colleagues, many of whom are also tax practitioners or heads of state tax departments or industry executives. And so, yeah, very great group of people to learn from and work with, and for a really great cause.
That's great. That's awesome. Basically, Jack, you're an inspiration, and I want to walk in. I want to walk in your footsteps in everything you do. This is
Uh,
good. I'm writing notes over here. So, one of the things I like doing with guests of the show is I love going back to the origin story, or like bring us all the way back. You said you're from California, but like, where did you grow up, and sort of like set the scene of from when you were growing up, you were young, you were in school, you eventually went to college, and there came a point where you decided I'm going to go into the tax world. And I look at it, from the perspective of there is such a small percentage of people in the United States, let's say, that deal with tax on a daily basis. And there's something I'd say a little bit different about us tax folks that we decide to take that plunge and we go tax. That's fun. I mean, at least I do. I don't know about everybody else. But there's so bring us back. Like where did you grow up? Where did you go to school? And then at what point did you make that choice where you said, "Hey, this is something I want to do"?
sure, sure. So, oh man, so I actually was born and raised
Jack, I'm
in.
not bringing you back that many years.
Yeah, back in my days. But um, but yeah, so I was born and raised in China, in this southern city called Shenzhen, which is right next to Hong Kong, and it's kind of the Silicon Valley of China in a sense. But my parents were non-tech, non-tax. I feel like a lot of young folks who get into tax are kind of inspired by their parents. Yeah, raised by a single mother, and like her profession's like totally different than tax and accounting and software. But I just kind of stumbled upon so first actually software. So I've been coding for longer than I've been doing tax.
Nice.
And that was also kind of my major in college as well. But yeah, and when I was much younger in high school, I was trying to start a little small business. Also helping out with family finances and just getting more experience. And At the time, I just had my, little measly McDonald's paychecks to work off of, and yeah, I couldn't hire an accountant or lawyer per se. And so I was like, I self-taught myself in programming. So I was like, okay, I'll self teach myself in tax and accounting and legal as well, and hopefully don't go too wrong. Well, I
Famous last words.
yeah, yeah, famous last words. I'm
So
the type of
so
guy.
what you
Yeah.
just said, it takes two paths, I find. Either they say, "Hopefully this won't go wrong," and it goes horribly wrong, or "Hopefully this won't go wrong," and they become an accountant. It's either
Ah,
one or the other.
wow, oh, I feel like this is kind of like Schrodinger's from. Actually, both happened to me.
Okay.
Um, so I started doing a lot of my research. I'm the type of guy who like will like go really deep down the rabbit hole of a really interesting Wikipedia article, and so like the tax things felt natural to me. I just went all the way down the rabbit hole of S corps. S corps. It's one of those things where I don't know. It's like it looks really cool on the outside, but then like once you are like doing it, it's not that so cool. I feel like because there's also a lot of unwritten rules that if it's your first time doing an S corp, you just don't know like things in practice. So I like faxing the S corp election, which is mistake number one. They never actually recognized the S corp election, and then I didn't know what to do. I didn't know you're supposed to act as an S corp already. And I didn't know you have to like file a tax return every year. If you don't, there's a lot of penalties. And so
Yeah.
actually, like my first experience with that, the S corp actually got pretty severely or relative at the time penalized for how I was doing it. I was like, well, um, yeah, but I still liked doing tax, and I figured my way out of the penalties. Thankfully,
Yeah.
thank God for first time penalty abatement. Yeah, so I learned from my mistakes. I still love tax. Yeah, I don't like paying my taxes. That's the thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the puzzleness aspect to it. Where you like just once you figure out all the pieces and you just fit it all together, and it's like wow, it's like you get a really cool sense of accomplishment.
Yes,
And so
totally.
that's what I really loved about tax is just being able to learn so much and like just get really creative but like legal.
Legally
With
creative, yes.
tax code and what we can do and really minimize the tax that everyone pays. And so that's also kind of been the approach I take with my clients too. And so yeah,
Nice.
so really love my initial experience, even though aside from penalties part. And at the time I was underage, and so I couldn't like get VITA, and so I couldn't actually work for a tax firm. And so the
Oh,
only avenue for me was to volunteer at VITA tax sites. And so
nice.
worked by my local United Way, learned a lot, self-taught myself a lot as well on Reddit. The r/tax subreddit is actually really great. A really, really like accomplished and cool tax professionals on there to learn from. And then as soon as I
There are,
became
it's just funny. I don't know if you would put that on your resume, be like, "Learned tax from Reddit, no big
yeah,
deal."
I'm proud of that. It was like it's actually a really great learning experience, I would say,
Yeah,
for
yeah. No,
someone to
I
actually.
agree. You just have to know which, subreddits to look
Oh
in,
yeah.
and
Oh
you have to
yeah,
know how
yeah,
to
yeah.
filter out, good advice from bad advice.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. So
That's
yeah, so
awesome.
since I became engaged, got my P10, started my tax firm, started my own by the tax site as well, and rest is history.
That's really cool. What made you wanna start a Vitus site on your own as opposed to just doing taxes full time, on your own, like, as a business?
Yeah, sure, sure. So I think like in the beginning days, like tax firm, I guess I guess I kind of started both at the same time, but my initial take was just that like when you start out on your own for the first time, especially when you don't already have a set client that you work with, maybe at another firm who can follow you and whatnot, and you're just kind of building it from scratch like I was. It would be harder to kind of gain those initial set clients. So I was
Mhm.
like, in the meantime, like, why not really, work on the tax return full time? Because I actually never pay for any advertising pretty much
Nice.
for my tax return. It just kind of grew naturally and organically. Like people find you on Google Maps. I think that's a nice part about having an office. Bit of investment, but people find you. And
Yeah.
also just word of mouth and reputation, especially amongst the college community that's in. But yeah, I also started the VITA tax site also to just get more experience, I would say, especially on the managerial side as well. And,
Mm.
growing a volunteer team that train, manage, help mentor some who actually went on to some really great positions in the tax world. Yeah, and I think that was really great. And really love also working with low income taxpayers as well. I think VITA
Mhm.
tax sites are great. That was kind of how I got my start in the industry. So my thinking was, also trying to help others, get their start in the industry, and also while gaining more experience on my own, and also for a great cause as well, giving back to the community. So that
That's
was
awesome. That's really cool. Now for your individual firm, I know it's probably gone through some levels of transformation. But where are you now? Are you a sole practitioner still? Do you have staff? And where do you see that in the future while you're simultaneously working on these other projects like ETAC for Congress, and then as well as accordance for tax professionals.
sure. Yeah, so right now, sole practitioner, but I do have seasonal assistants
Nice.
to help me with some of the grunt work, and also building out my own software as well to help
Of
with
course.
a bunch of those like document
See,
upload.
I'm like you. When I started, and when I needed practice management, when I graduated from
Yeah,
using an Excel spreadsheet, when I only
yeah,
had like 10, 15 clients, I said, let
yeah,
me. So I went ahead and made my own. I made my own database inside Notion because I said, oh, this way, I could edit it exactly how I want it,
oh, yeah,
and
yeah,
that was great for a season. And then I realized, yeah, I'm busy doing taxes. I don't have time to do like creating my own software
yeah.
also. And
That's
then
fair,
I moved
that's
over to
fair.
TaxDome, and I just said, okay, it's fine with me. And I left the Notion database alone.
That's
So,
fair,
but
that's
it's
fair.
it's nice that you get to work in both of those worlds and really
Yeah,
create the reality that you want to be in. I know.
yeah,
I had a friend growing up that
yeah,
worked in the 3D animation space, and like
yeah.
the big production companies, they make their own software. So if a designer has a requirement, they just
Sure.
ask the software developers to change it, which I
Yeah,
sort of wish that was more of a way of how like the current tax world worked, because
sure.
I feel like us tax professionals are we're sort of like that old person like screaming at a cloud, where we're like, why can't you just change the software so it works like XYZ? And then software company does something completely different. And we're like, no, 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 we've been telling you, just listen to us. And
Yeah,
so like some software companies are better than others, but I mean, I write extensive lists for any software I use of all the feedback, and for the ones that listen, uh, I see it makes a world of a difference.
yeah,
So
100%.
it's nice to know now you've sort of like made that transition to being not only a preparer but also someone giving out tools to other tax preparers. Tell me a little bit about Accordance and how you got there and how you became a co-founder and what that's like.
Yeah, for sure, sure. And like, you make a really great point too, that, a lot of the software in the tax space kind of go off in directions that might not necessarily, relate to the actual need of a tax professional.
Right.
I've also tried a bunch of, practice management softwares too, and I'm like, is this actually, worth the money for me? And, is it actually going to help me in my current flow? It was tough. It was tough. I think for this tax season, I actually did end up going with a tax management software, Canopy. It's okay
Okay.
for
Yeah.
what it is, okay for a value, but I feel like there's so much more to be imagined, and like as someone who has both the tax and the software knowledge, fairly deeply,
Yeah.
you know, I get to like see problems that we have as tax professionals from both like as a fellow tax professional perspective, but also from a software perspective of how can we actually solve this in an
Mm,
efficient manner and in a manner that would deliver really great value for tax professional and their clients. And so
right,
kind of
right.
been the approach I take, at Accordance is, how can we really deliver, the next generation of a frontier, um, research tool for tax professionals and really transform the industry. Not to replace tax professionals, but really, if we can expedite, tax research on really complex subjects.
Yeah,
I work with a lot of international cases, and a lot of times have to do research to craft an argument in ways that would be favorable to my client because the tax code sometimes doesn't even handle some of the situations I see, like garden leave. First
right.
time this season was the first time I ever learned what garden leave was. It's kinda like a European version of severance, and, for a particular client, they were like a dual status, like a non-resident to a resident, and then, I was trying to find that sweet spot of, can we, you know, kind of, craft an argument around, oh, the payments around the non-resident period, how can we make it not taxable, not US source income, stuff like
Do
that, where
you
it's like,
do you
it's really
also feel like sometimes you're the first person to ever ask that question? You're like, "How can I
yeah,
possibly be the first person? I'm like,
yeah.
we're youngins over here, and like, how are we the first ones? How could
Yeah, exactly.
nobody's asked this question before?"
Yeah, yeah, and, like, you don't know who to go I mean, okay, I do have some tax professionals who I know, within their
And
expertise, but
but we might even ask them, and I've had this at every
yeah,
tax firm that I worked
sure.
for. I always ended up having questions where I would go around to the office and knock, "Excuse me, do you know the answer?" And then people would be like, "Yeah, I have no idea. That's a great
Yeah,
question." I'm like, "What do you
yeah,
mean?" I'm like, I appreciate the compliment, but I really want an answer."
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah, and, like, some folks also, especially if they're not part of your firm, are gonna be hesitant to answer some questions. For example,
mm,
is foreign crypto subject to the 8938 reporting? That's a question no one wants to answer because they don't want the liability. And like literally, like no one else on the internet also wants to answer that question because it's even worse. They have a written record.
right,
If they have a
right.
wrong position, and so like it's the type of questions where it's like you want to craft a really good argument. You want to like take in all these different opinions, perspectives, different ways to think and approach a problem. And in the case of the garden leaves, that was actually that client I had to do about 12 hours of research. I thought a pretty good argument. I think it's still a pretty good argument. And then, one of the first weeks of joining Accordance, one of the questions I asked was that exact situation was, for my client, this was the situation. They had a garden leave. How can you create, an argument to maximize the tax benefits for a client in accordance in like 5 minutes? Instead of 12 hours, 5 minutes. Just
Yeah,
gave me a really solid argument backed by tax court cases too, and also
mm,
explains its science reasoning for why that argument was great. And I, read the tax court case that I gave. Yeah, it's a great. It's actually a true case too. Awesome, awesome, line reasoning, and it would have been a better benefit for my client than the argument that I had. So, it's like it's cases like this where I'm like, yeah, especially as a solo practitioner who don't really have someone within the firm to turn to, for these types of situations, and especially when you're starting out as well, and you're always wanting like that second pair of eyes, but everyone's
yeah,
so busy, that accordance is really allowing, more tax professionals to join the industry, I feel,
yeah.
to really help with the accountant shortage.
Yeah, I feel like in the previous generation, it used to be, can you recite, chapter and verse where in the code it says this and that? And like now in the newer generation, it's more of like, do you possess the ability to figure out where it is? Do you
Yeah,
have those tools? And
for
and
sure.
and and now we're getting even further with not even like which section are you going to look it up in, but rather which
Sure.
AI you're going to use to be able to
Yeah,
find the right resources
yeah,
in a way that you're going to then interpret it correctly, making sure you're using high quality sources and you know what you're looking up and the context and nuance. So then how in accordance itself, are you doing software engineering or are you working more on the tax side to make sure the information that is being given out is accurate and high quality?
Sure, sure. So yeah, I mean, so I kind of like am in between software and, you know, kind of go to market side of things, but mostly software and, how to improve the product in terms of new features, how to improve the model as well, for better accuracy. And so kind of been dabbling a little bit everywhere, kind of wherever I'm needed. But lately I've been focused on kind of how can we improve the model. That was kind of my initial work for the first couple months was how can we improve the model in ways that I can make really targeted fixes so that we can deliver the maximum value, but also ship really fast.
Mhm.
So one example that I'll give is OBBBA,
Yeah.
or One Big Beautiful Bill.
Yeah.
There was the House version of the bill that passed the House, but the Senate was like, oh, when I like that, it's just, start from scratch basically.
Yeah.
And, changed or removed a lot of the provisions or added provisions in the final bill that was enacted. And, when the House bill was passed, there was a lot of commentary on the internet around the House bill. And, if you try and use any of the other AI tools or ChatGPT or whatnot,
It references all the old articles that have nothing to do with the final bill. Yes, I've seen this time and time again. Yes.
hallucinate sections, hallucinating a section that's in neither bill. Like then it's really hard to like figure out okay, what's actually true and what's not. And that was a big issue for our customers as well, and for me when I was asking foreigners about OBBBA. And so I knew exactly why it's wrong, especially within the accordance flow, and I knew how to fix it. It's actually a really simple fix if you know what you're doing. And so I actually made that fix by myself in 2 days.
Oh my gosh.
100% accuracy now on all OBBBA queries.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
No hallucinations.
How did you come to Accordance? What was the story of how you met the other team members and became a co-founder? Whatever you
Yeah, I didn't fully expect the joining another startup because in the past, right before Fortins, I was working on another startup of mine, and I was venture backed, kind of doing practice management, but also some AI tax planning as well. That would be
Okay.
a challenging, technical problem, but I like a good challenge. But yeah, and then I kind of shut that down. First startup, you learn so much with fundraising, hiring.
Yeah.
Fortunately, just made a lot of mistakes, and and I was shutting that down. I was like, maybe I'll take a little pause from the venture side of things and maybe bootstrap my own software startup for a little while. And then I had a couple mutual acquaintances to one of the co-founders of Accordance who separately was like, "Hey, there's another guy, at your school was working on tax, and you should meet the guy." And I was like,
Mm,
"Sure," because like there's only so many startups and companies in tax software. I was like,
yeah.
okay, I definitely want to meet them. I've also met with a lot of other tax software founders too. Um, but at the time, it was like literally like right as the tax season started earlier this
Oh
year.
gosh.
I was like, oh,
Okay.
I know, I don't have the time right now, but I'll for sure, hit them up, after tax season. And then like, it kind of dragged on, dragged on. I was just always busy. Um, and finally, we grabbed a coffee in like July or maybe June, July, and met the co-founder a couple times, and seemed really exciting what they were working on. I had my fair share of doubt, going in because I've also tried a lot of the other AI tools, AI research tools on the market, some tailored to tax that I wasn't fully impressed with. Maybe they're just in their infant stages, but Tortoise is also pretty new. It's only been founded like a year or two ago.
Yeah.
And so I have my fair share of doubt of, is the software actually good? Um, and did a little work trial with them for a month, tried out the product the first week, mind blown. I was just mind blown by the quality of the answers I gave. It was so much better than the other AI tools I've tried, and especially on really hard subjects that I touch on, international and also college students. You would think college student tax is actually super simple, but there's a lot of nuances and intricacies and a lot unwritten rules again
Yeah.
in tax that I think is what makes tax research so hard. All those unwritten rules and unknown interpretations of the laws when it applies to different contexts. And so I had my fair share of doubt, but I I was fully mind blown by the product, and I just saw so much potential now for AI in tax, how it can be used, how it can really help tax professionals deliver even greater value to their clients, and especially as folks kind of transition more into advisory. I think having a really great AI tool by your side, that's going to be a game changer.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's cool that you're able to be here, I'll say sort of along for the ride on both sides.
For sure, for
Um,
sure.
shaping the future of the industry, which, it's funny because when ChatGPT came out, what are we up to? 3 years? We're
Yeah,
about to hit 3 years, I think.
yeah,
November of 2022.
yeah.
Everyone immediately, everyone prophesized the end of every job. It's gonna happen right away. Here we are almost 3 years later, and I'm like,
Everyone's
still
doing
work
it for the
still
most
have to
part.
sit down and work every single day, so I'm not really
Yeah,
sure what
yeah,
changed. But it's more of like okay, how are we going to utilize this? A little bit of inside baseball. Back in what month was it? We were in Orlando together at the IRS
yeah,
forum.
yeah,
It was about a month ago. Maybe it was not September. Maybe it was August.
yeah, something like
I,
that.
be-
Yeah, yeah,
I believe it was the end of August or something
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
that.
yeah,
And Jack and I were sitting near each other in one of the classes, and I see that he's like on a work call, like on Slack, and he says, "Oh, sorry, I got to take care of a work emergency." And I'm going,
yeah,
"Work emergency? Who is this guy working with? He works by himself. What is going on?" So when I saw you finally posted on LinkedIn about joining Accordance, I was like,
yeah.
"Ah,
Ah,
now I know. Now it all makes sense."
yeah,
So that's so exciting. And I think the thing I'm most excited about also is the fact that, like, being the tax professional in the room, you can not only bring insight from your real life experience, but also from all the connections you make with all the other tax professionals, and you can
sure,
bring their voices into the room to develop the product in a way that's going to actually be helpful for the
sure,
company and
sure,
for taxpayers, tax professionals. What do
100%.
you think, like, on that note, where do you see the industry going? Because now we're up to the AI agent stage of AI, and some people are predicting, oh, we're sort of maxing out our capabilities. Some people are like, no, 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 we still have, Sam Altman is really betting on AGI coming. The other AGI, not the OG AGI. The OG AGI is adjusted gross income. We know that. But like, he's still betting on, oh, that's coming, it's coming. So, like, where do you see, I'll say, the tax industry specifically in terms of like the changing landscape with AI, and with like the older generation retiring and closing on firms, and the younger generation going ahead and starting more virtual tech driven firms? Like, what do you see for the future?
For sure. I think there's definitely a lot of fear of AI replacing jobs, AGI coming for everyone's professions. That I think at least for now we're too far from AGI for that to be the case. And I think, you know, that's probably an end goal for a lot of the, foundational models, companies like OpenAI. Um, but I feel like from a technical perspective, we're still pretty far from that stage.
Mm,
Even like with models today, um, it can't do a lot of the ultimate thinking and decision making, behind a lot of, for example, in tax, you still need to go and, or like, it takes a good tax professional to take the answer that, AI or like accordance would give you, and really consider, like, is this a good argument that I can make personally and I can personally back, if I'm like in front of the IRS or tax court today. I think I would say accordance for the most part is really great answers, but I think being able to make those final decision making of, is this, position solid? How's the risk? Am I comfortable with the risk,
Yeah.
of this position?
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of considerations that, us tax professionals have to, really ponder in our industry that I think AI on its own right now can't replicate. Like, can't
Yeah.
replicate the judgment that we have. Even
Yeah.
though it's kind of getting there with the thinking model or like the reasoning models, but again, like, what makes a good tax professional stand out is our judgment and our experience, something that AI won't have. And so I think, you know, um, I feel like tax, especially as a profession itself, will be for the most part safe from AI. Because I think it's also, I don't say great timing, but just like kind of, it times well with the departure of more and more senior folks from the industry. Like a lot of tax professionals that I know are, getting up there in, age, and a lot of folks, really want to retire, and they can't find, buyers or really good folks to take over their practice, and the folks who are already in practice are all overwhelmed and stressed, and so I feel like AI in that sense will help relieve the pressure, at least from a personnel
That's a good
and
point.
expertise perspective, yeah. But I don't think we'll fully replace tax professionals because there's so much that we do that AI can't do, and I don't think AI potentially can ever do. But at
Right.
least from what I'm seeing right now.
Right. It's funny when you were saying when you were describing what a tax professional's responsibility is in interpreting the resources AI gives us, it almost made me think that on the flip side, this is something we've actually been doing our whole career because we get information from the client and we now need to use our context and nuance to interpret everything they say. Because the one
Exactly.
thing I always say about clients, I love my clients. They are
Yeah.
unreliable narrators. And
Hmm.
even like in the way I ask questions sometimes, I will specifically ask questions in different ways in a tricky way in order to trick them into giving the answer that I know that they think one thing and they're going to think another thing. And therefore, I sort of back them into a corner so I can figure out what they actually mean, and
Yeah.
then I can do their return correctly.
Yeah. For sure.
So like we've always been in the art doing performing the art of interpretation, and so
100%.
now like if anything, who's taking the responsibility for all these judgment calls? It's us, and now we're just doing it in a different capacity. But that's a really good point, by the way. I like that of the like relieving the pressure, and it's almost funny because it's so easy to look back and see how sort of the world developed in like an almost like planned way where everyone was forced in 2020 to like go paperless, and now we're feeding all the paperless documents into AI a few years later, and we're only ready for that because we're in a paperless world now.
For
So it's
sure.
it's really cool to see that progression. And like maybe had AI came out 10 years ago, the world wouldn't have been ready for it. And now we're finally like,
Exactly.
ready to actually utilize these different technologies.
Exactly. Exactly.
One thing I want to talk about real quick because I'm curious to get your take on this and see if you have any like stories or anything to share. One thing I like going back to is the human aspect of our clients. It's so easy to forget that at the end of the day, every tax return, at the top of the tax return are one or two names, and maybe even some children, and those are human beings, people that we're trying to take care of and protect, and do whatever we can to help them. What are some maybe stories you could share about like the day-to-day interactions with your clients, as well as things that you've been able to help your clients with that made a big difference in their life, and gave them that relief that they were looking for?
Looking back at kind of clientele that I serve, I think that some of the most impactful populations that work with immigrants, low income taxpayers. There's definitely been quite a lot of stories, really success stories,
Yeah,
of ways that I've been able to help them, with their tax. And like, yeah, I guess like, people think about tax, from like, it's kind of like, I just need to take care of it once a year and like don't think about it and like, probably not life changing, whatnot, and like, tax profession is not like a life changing profession like, medicine, for say. But I would say, given these experiences I've had, tats can be life changing. So, you know, simple case of like immigrants who, I had an immigrant one time who was trying to get their citizenship, and they had a lot of tax issues because they used TurboTax and back to kind of your point of like, tax professionals, we know how to craft the questions to also maximize the benefits for our clients.
right.
Uh, and ask questions in succinct ways and in ways that are creative and kind of it gets her mind going with like all the different possibilities of ways we can say for our clients that TurboTax doesn't do, and I don't think AI would do as well. I actually came upon this case on Instagram in front of a friend, um, and she was having a GoFundMe for tax for a $10,000 tax bill.
Oh, like a GoFundMe to help pay her taxes.
Yeah, and she was a low-income student and an immigrant. That just seems messed up.
And that's her whole life in front of
Yeah,
her.
yeah, and that's what TurboTax said she owed $10,000. Um, and she doesn't have the money, and it's like literally like by the time I saw her, the post, it was like less than a week before her final interview for citizenship. And when you're trying to get your citizenship, you gotta pay your taxes, right? It's
Mhm.
your more responsibility, and they look at your character and whatnot. So she was an official, and I came upon this case, and I was like, oh man, I feel like it doesn't seem right. Let's chat and see kind of what I can do. And it's like in the middle of summer, I was, you know, kind of on vacation. Like I hop on a call, asked a few questions. 2 hours later, that $10,000 bill went down to three, and then got her an installment agreement,
3,000.
3,000, a whole 70% savings.
You were like, "I don't know if I can give you $7,000, but I could certainly show you how to owe $7,000 less."
Yeah, in just 2 hours of work,
That's awesome.
and she was able to, get the installment agreement going, pay some of the tax down, and then wrote a letter in support, and she got her citizenship.
That's
And
awesome.
it's like things like that where it's like, only a tax professional with the right expertise can just see things that if you don't have the right expertise, you wouldn't be able to see, or if you're just using TurboTax, you're trying to handle all the millions of permutations of a client's possible situation, and
Are you a
yeah,
farmer, and are you from Alaska, and do you do
yeah,
fishing?
yeah, exactly, exactly. And I had another case too where this low income student came to me or emailed me literally like the second and last week of tax season. I almost didn't answer because I was just so busy. I was like, emailed me like six different questions. I was like, I don't have the time to write you an email back, but if you come in to my office for like 5 minutes, I'll try to
Yeah.
answer questions. And then I look at his tax return for like 15 seconds. I'm not like you know um hyperbolizing it. 15 seconds looking for the things that, I know what to look for. Ask a couple questions. And look at his parents' tax returns also for another like 15 seconds. I was like, great. If you allow me to amend you and your parents' tax returns going back 4 years, I will for sure get you back $10,000. And always under promise, over deliver. I knew that there was a lot more. And so
Okay.
it was about like 4 hours of work. And at the end, it was like over $26,000 of tax refunds going
Wow.
back to them. Basically, their whole years of income for their parents
Yeah,
in
and what
4
you're
hours.
describing is literally life changing. Like
Literally.
even what you're describing about helping that person with, you know, getting her citizenship. I mean, that is not only life changing to her, but like her like generationally life changing, and
Yeah,
that's amazing.
for
And
sure.
that's why I love hearing these types of stories because it's so easy to forget
Yeah,
and
yeah.
realize like there's a person behind every tax return. Okay, real quick as we wrap up, a
Sure.
few rapid fire questions that
Okay.
I try to ask everybody. Okay, tea or coffee?
That's not
Ooh, oh,
that
are you on team water? What is this?
Okay, okay, definitely tea and or coffee. Okay, but like I feel like tea. There's matcha tea. There's like boba. There's like a bunch of other
Listen,
teas.
whatever tea boats your float, man.
I don't know
Okay.
with coffee.
Okay, coffee. Okay,
It's not
I
a
think I know
choice.
the answer to this next question. Mac or Windows?
That's even.
Well,
Mac.
you are a software developer, so
It's
I would think
hard.
Mac.
That's hard.
When do you use Windows then?
Well, okay, I only use okay. I've always been a Windows lover until I got my first Mac. I was like, okay, I actually love a Mac. Um,
If
but
you
because I
say
think
so.
Windows, yeah, it's just it's cheap, it's great for value, but just
Yeah, but like what if you want to connect
militaries.
4 monitors like I have? Then what?
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I can
Right?
understand that.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay, okay,
Um,
fine.
you
Okay,
give me two
dark
hours from the start.
I listen, I know my customers. Dark mode or light mode?
On light mode, 100%.
Light mode. Oh, okay, good. Okay, we are
Okay.
similar in that.
Okay.
Okay, and
Good.
then
Good.
what is Jack doing when he's not working on his startup and his taxes and all the amazing initiatives you're up to? What are you relaxing on the weekend? What are you doing?
I love. Okay, I don't. I also work on the weekends. This is unfortunate. I
That's
know.
that's okay. Yeah, no judgment there. Okay, fine. Maybe because you run your own business, maybe you're taking a vacation day on a Tuesday. You
Yeah,
know.
this. That's true. That's true. But I would say I love good food. Like I would go to a nice restaurant once in a while to really treat myself. But I just love
Nice.
good food in general, and also I love going to gym as well. So those two things.
Nice. That's awesome. Okay, well, Jack, this has been so much fun. Love hanging out, and I'm so
Likewise,
happy
Yehuda.
we got a chance to see each other. This time,
Likewise,
not in person, but you know, hopefully in person in the future.
for sure.
Best of
Sure.
luck to you and to everybody
You
listening.
as
If you
well.
need a, if you're interested in reaching out to Jack, getting to know more about what he does and how to reach him, there's going to be more information in the show notes. So please, you know, don't be shy, be nice, reach out, and looking forward to seeing everyone on the next one. Thanks so much, Jack.
Thank you so much, Yehuda.
Thanks for listening to The People Behind the Books. Want to join me on a future episode? Send an email to thepeoplebehindthebooks@gmail.com. No W-9 required. If you enjoyed this episode, hit follow and leave a 5-star rating. It costs $0 and is fully deductible in the category of making my day. The People Behind the Books, because every accountant counts.